This podcast is made on the lands of the Pambalong clan of the Awabakal people, and we acknowledge elders past and present. In 1965, the University of Newcastle opened its doors with a bold vision to make tertiary education accessible to its community. Today, that vision has grown into a global legacy with more than 200,000 alumni making an impact across the world. Welcome to Leading Conversations, a series bringing you stories from our alumni, the people who shaped and been shaped by the University of Newcastle. In our third episode, Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky speaks with alum and CEO of the Hunter Medical Research Institute, Francis Kay, who since graduating from the university has fostered a leading career in medical research.
Hello, Francis, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
You came to the University of Newcastle with a goal of pursuing a career where you could help people. And after completing your Bachelor of Science and PhD, you've built quite a distinguished career in mental health research before being appointed the leader of HMRI in 2022. And its team has shared a vision about having the people of the Hunter to be the healthiest million people on the planet. Since taking on this leadership role at HMRI, how has your work evolved?
Being a clinician before, I took on this role, I was really very connected to what people's wants and needs were and how there was still, despite all of our best efforts, quite a disconnect often between the work we do in our labs or our clinics, our research clinics, and what people really wanted and needed in terms of their mental health or their addiction support. And so I really learned and felt that strongly and wanted to make sure that as a concept flowed through to the work that we then strategically invested in and thought about at HMRI. Not that discoveries and medical discoveries and lab-based work isn't important. It is critical, but equally critical is being able to take that lab work out of the lab and put it into the hands of the people who need it most. Those sorts of principles and concepts that I learned and was introduced to through my degree and way of thinking here at Newcastle Uni, but then through my career has really driven how I think we're trying to position HMRI to better serve our community.
So, Francis, you practically grew up on the University of Newcastle's Callaghan campus as your parents helped set up our biology department back in the 1970s. So I wonder if you could share with us how this came about and how being on the campus at a young age influenced your journey to the university and beyond.
I feel like I was almost born on campus. Mum and Dad grew up and were in Adelaide. Dad did his study there, so he's a reproductive immunologist and did some work there at Flinders University, and he was doing his PhD at the time, and his PhD supervisor, Barry Botcher, had the offer to come up and be the head of department here in biological sciences and to establish the department from scratch. That gave Dad the opportunity to move with Uncle Barry over here for the first 5 years, which is what he promised my mum he'd do, first 5 years, and then we'll come back to Adelaide. So they came over in 1970 and with Uncle Barry and helped set up the biological sciences department, which it is today. So my sister and I, because Mum was working and Dad was working, spent a lot of time here on campus. Or we'd come and pick Dad up and work and things like that. So I was very familiar with the beautiful bush campus we have and really its idea of what university was and what the students were and what a university education could do. Like Mum and Dad didn't put pressure on me or my sister to go to university, but it was just an accepted part of what we did. So we're very fortunate to be exposed very early on to university life. And so although the content and the level of education and study you have to do at university is not like anything I'd experienced, it was good for me because it felt familiar. It felt like I was coming back home to a place where I already felt very, very welcomed and very, very connected.
So you chose to come and study psychology with us and as part of your Bachelor of Science. So tell us about what motivated you to choose psychology.
It was a little bit of an accident, I think. My intention was to come and do medicine because the medical program was very innovative and problem-solving focused and taught in a way that was different from any other university. And so I applied for medicine and didn't get in, which was a big shock to me. And I think as most young people get shocked when they don't get when they have that sort of failure for the first time. Well, I thought it was a failure. And so in thinking about what I wanted to do, I had to think about, well, why was it that I really wanted to do medicine? Was it the prestige or the status, or was it about helping people, or was it about understanding disease and those sorts of things? And so that led me to think a bit more broadly about science and other ways to be able to help people. And so I've always loved talking. You should probably already about that about me, Alex, and your people are probably finding that out now. And I love connecting with people. And so that sense of connection was something that I was quite passionate about and came quite easily to me. And so I kind of thought, well, maybe psychology is a way to get all of those needs met without doing medicine. And so I made my way into psychology. I did a science degree and majored in psychology because I wasn't quite sure that that's exactly what I wanted to do. And so the flexibility of doing a science degree and doing biology and chemistry, I did some maths as well as psychology throughout my degree, really helped me understand, well, learn lots of skills and different ways of thinking, but helped me actually test out that psychology was exactly what I wanted to do over time.
That's really interesting way of studying. I think students these days quite often choose very much the discipline they want to study in, and it's very highly prescribed. I think the idea, is still that we would encourage is to people to think more broadly, kind of multidisciplinary studies, because you get to explore things and same times it reinforces what you really like.
It really does. I don't think I appreciated at the time the thinking space, the freedom to develop my way of thinking about the world that my university, particularly undergraduate degree, gave me. And I still, fall back on that way uni taught me the way psychology taught me to think about the world, the way biology taught me to think about the world, the way chemistry taught me to think about the world. Tried to pick all the different bits and pieces out of that to, and brought that to leadership and other sorts of things that I've done since that time. It wasn't that I wasn't doing, choosing a degree that would lead to a career, because psychology has a very clear pathway to the application of your skills into practice with exposure to placements and those sorts of things. But it wasn't the only reason that I wanted to come to university, and I keep thinking about the way the university taught me a way to think about the world that I'd never experienced before, and that's really set me up for success, I think.
With uni labs that often ran all day, having deep social connections was essential in helping Frances manage her workload. The Callaghan campus created an environment that allowed her to build and nurture strong friendships.
I think it was good because I also had a cohort of mates who I'd been through school with who also came to university. Now, we weren't all doing the same degree, but if we're going to events and social events, it was usually university social events or the social clubs or the types of university clubs and societies that were on campus at the time. And that was really how we expanded our friendship networks, connected with people who were thinking in the same way with us and socialise, but also a way for me to keep touch with some of my other mates who were coming to uni who were doing different degrees. I spent a lot of time on campus. So I had labs for biology, labs for chemistry that would go, all day. And so I had a lot of on-campus contact time and really then had to kind of find myself at home, make myself more at home on campus to get through those days. And so I loved going to the York Community Library. We had to actually go in and look up journals and journal articles by hand at that time. The cafe scene was growing on campus, and I loved it's still a little alcove, the little sun alcove in the Shortland campus that's, exposed to the sun. We just go and sit out there with friends in between lectures and really immerse ourselves in this beautiful campus, but also take advantage of all the wonderful, cool activities that were happening on campus. So I remember money's always tight and is even more tight these days as a student. I was working at McDonald's at the time to try to help me earn a bit of income to go through uni. But, the student union will put on, pancake Wednesdays. So we'd be lining up in that space at the Shortland Union and getting our free pancakes and connecting with people. And so I have lots of fond memories about not just what we learned in lectures and in those labs and shoots, but also just being on campus and soaking up the atmosphere and making new connections and friends that way.
Socialising, making friends, and I guess you finished your undergraduate degree. So what then inspired you to then become a medical researcher, Frances?
Well, I think I was always around the concept of research. So Dad, as a reproductive immunologist, had, he did his PhD, so he had his teaching and he also had what his version of clinic work was. So he worked with Uncle Barry and helped establish a little company that was helping inform and set up the first IVF clinic at Lingard Hospital. So again, doing that translation of work into practice. And when I finished my science degree, I went into honours.
Right.
Honours in psychology, which was fantastic. So again, had exposure to research in that context and was able to travel around and support the fire brigades and test and evaluate their critical incident stress debriefing that they were doing in and around traumas that they would experience on the road. So a different kind of research, but again, connected to what people needed and wanted. And then I did a little bit of clinical work. So because I thought, I want to be in psychology and I want to, be a clinical psychologist because that's the pathway. So a bit of clinical experience in and around, and that was tough. It was actually tougher than I thought it was. And I think, and then I applied for the clinical masters here in psychology and didn't get in. Why am I not getting in? This is the pathway. So again, it was that point of, why am I actually here and doing psychology? Why do I actually want to do it? And what are the other opportunities available to me? And so at that time, I was actually tossing up a clinical degree or a PhD and thought, maybe now's the time to enrol in a PhD.
So it's really, I think one of the things I think is coming out of this podcast, there's forks in the road. People don't always get to do their first choice, and you do something else, and that takes you on another journey. So life is not one like linear pathway. And I was very similar in the sense I wanted, back in 1978 when I finished my HSC, the University of Newcastle had its first cohort of medical students. The medical program opened. So I applied.
Did you?
Because my parents really wanted me to be a doctor, and I thought I wanted to as well, but I didn't get in. And, I then took a cadetship with BHP in Wollongong, which is what you do. And back in Wollongong, a very similar town to Newcastle, but that was my calling was really engineering, and I really got back to what I wanted to do. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you. Sometimes you think you want to do something, and then in the end it doesn't always eventuate, but you then find another path. So let's talk about the next steps in your path, your PhD. So I understand it was around treatment for depression and substance abuse. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it and how the University of Newcastle helped you get your research career kicked off.
Yes, absolutely. So I was noticing with the clinical work I was doing that we're working in the mental health space, that there are lots of people who would come in and try to get access to treatment who also had an alcohol or other drug use problem. And really at that time, our services were quite siloed. So either you had a mental health problem or you had a drug and alcohol problem, and you had to work out what came first. And when we worked out what came first, that's the service you got. But of course, it was really hard, particularly if people are struggling with these kinds of issues for a long time, to work out what's come first, and really they impact each other. And so, I was thinking there's got to be a better way to help people to stop people from falling through the gaps. And at the time I was also working at the Hunter Institute for Mental Health. So Trevor Waring started that. It was almost like a consultancy and mental health promotion arm of the health district at the time. And so we were working in some suicide prevention work, and we were also working with GPs locally to try to help them better detect and then treat using cognitive behaviour therapy, a psychological intervention, women who were experiencing postnatal depression. And we were using that via a CD-ROM. And I was sitting there thinking, we've got to do something that sort of wraps around the existing services for people who are experiencing mental health and addiction. Maybe if we can teach GPs to do CBT via CD-ROM, then maybe we can teach people directly themselves to do.
Means computer-based training, right?
No, cognitive behaviour therapy. That's the therapy. So if we can teach GPs to do that using a CD-ROM, maybe we can teach people themselves to do that.
CD-ROM is just a recorded.
We don't have CD-ROMs
anymore. That's right. So people might not remember what they are.
And so
it's now being done by ChatGPT, isn't it?
That's right. We were the first ChatGPT. That's right. So it was wonderful because at the time the Hunter Institute of Mental Health was on, and it's now Everymind, but it was on the James Fletcher campus, and we were co-located with the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Newcastle in medicine. Coffee time and morning tea time, we'd walk through the corridors and I'd be interacting with academics from psychiatry. And so one of those academics was Amanda Baker, who was doing a work in that time exactly at integrated treatments for mental health and addiction issues. And so we got talking. I got a research assistant job on one of her grants. And then the opportunity for a PhD came up, and she said, and she'd actually just finished her PhD. So I became her first PhD student. And I said, I've got this idea from the work I was doing at the Institute, the clinical work, and this gap, maybe that we could do something in this area. So she said, go for it. And that was what was wonderful, is that she didn't think that it had any legs at all, trying to use a digital intervention to teach people to be their own therapist. But the freedom of a PhD and the curiosity of her mindset and the support system within the university all came together to give me the opportunity to give it a go, to test it out, to see via research whether it would work, and blow me down, it did.
Building industry connections is such an important part of shaping a strong career. By sharing her early PhD research at medical conferences, Frances ended up catching the attention of the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre, a moment that helped open new doors.
conferences like corridors is where you kind of can make connections and think a bit freely when you're outside of your own little offices and labs. And so I went to a World Congress on alcohol and presented some of my early PhD work. And Marie Thiessen was in the audience, who was pretty early in her career at the time, but is now world-renowned globally researcher herself in addiction and mental health prevention. And so she came up to me at the end of my presentation and said, "Frances, I love what you're doing. I've got similar sorts of issues and pressures where I'm working in my context at the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre in UNSW. You know, when you finished your PhD, let's have a talk about what's next." And so we cooked up a beautiful postdoctoral program for me to do. I was fortunate to win an NHMRC postdoctoral fellowship and took that to the University of New South Wales and expanded my work in my PhD, still collaborating with Amanda because that's how you grow your networks, and took that work to the next level with the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre.
Let's talk a little bit about HMRI. So a key component of HMRI is innovation. So innovation is about translating the research into impactful outcomes for the community. So tell us a little bit about how that's happening at HMRI. How are you engaging with the community and building relationships to be able to do that translation of medical research from HMRI?
Well, I see HMRI really as a bit of a supply chain. So trying to fix or speed up that supply chain between how knowledge and discoveries are generated and how quickly we can get them and safely we can get them put into health services or into the community. And so what we're doing at HMRI is actually going out and spending time in all of the corners of our region. So at the moment, we've also done a big research program review, regrouping our research programs into things like brain health, lung health, cardiovascular and metabolic health. We've also got precision medicine and health. We've got immune health. So all the big systems in the body, we want to understand not what only disease looks like, but what does health look like? So how can we not only prevent disease or treat disease, but what do we need to do before we actually get sick to be healthy in terms of our lungs, our hearts, our brains, and so forth. And what we want to do, so we're letting our wonderful affiliated scientists and clinicians drive the cutting edge of discovery in those areas, and we're taking those concepts out into the community and go, well, what matters to you? Like what does healthy look like for you in terms of lung health, in terms of environmental health, in terms of resilience, in terms of, discoveries in healthcare? What does healthy mean to you and look like? What does it mean to your family and what does it mean to your communities? And so we've gone out over the last 12 months and had almost 5,000 people in our community give us an answer. And what we're now trying to do is measure reconcile what we're good at in our research programs with our affiliate researchers and clinicians with what the problems that the community wants us to solve. And we've got a few ideas and we're just working through those at the moment. So I'm not going to actually launch or to announce them here, but that's how we're connecting with the community.
I guess the other part is, like all research is kind of done in a very factual, evidence-based way, and particularly like medical research is very fast-moving, so you've got to be on the game. But it doesn't necessarily lead us to work in a way that we're showing maybe compassion and empathy, because it just becomes a health condition. So how does HMI and you as a leader bring that kind of human empathy and compassion element into the research projects, particularly when you're having to interact with the community?
Oh, that is such a good question. That is the big question, isn't it? And I think because we absolutely need our scientists and our clinicians to be razor focused and immersed in that science and that cutting edge, that really deep technical expertise and discovery. We need people to do that. And it's, as you're saying, it's really hard to be so immersed and focused on that and thinking about what the community needs. And I think that's what HMRI's role is. And so for us, that's why our research agenda is really important, and that's separate from what the research programs will be doing themselves, is we do the work to connect with the community, and then we can strategically set up funds and maybe seek funding to invest in projects that bring the skills and the discoveries together out of those labs and out of those programs and connect with our data scientists, our health economists, the clinicians and the community to do those strategic projects that matter to the community. And it might be mental health this year, it might be asthma next year, it might be dementia the year after. And so that's what I think our role is to be, I guess, that concierge and broker of between the community and the scientists and clinicians.
The vision of HMRI to make sure the Hunter has the healthiest million people on the planet. That's a wonderful, inspiring vision, Frances. But how do we know we're going to make progress to that goal? How do we achieve that goal? What are you working to do at HMRI to make that happen?
It is pretty ambitious, but I reckon we can do it. And people often ask me, well, why are we the healthiest million? Don't you want the healthiest 26 million and the healthiest, population of the world, 3 billion or whatever, 6 billion or whatever it is? And we absolutely do. But the reason we're focusing on our million people here in the Hunter New England region is that we are a snapshot demographically, geographically, health-wise, of everywhere else in Australia and virtually everywhere else in the world. So if we can get things working and happening and innovating and discovering and translating here, it's much quicker to scale that up to the rest of Australia and the world than if you do that work anywhere else. So that's why we're the really perfect testbed for so much innovation, as you would know in your area, Alex. But also the same is true for health. And so that's the first concept. So we want everyone to do their research here and to help us with clinical trials or whatever it happens to be here, because we know it'll be very quickly and easily scaled up elsewhere. The other thing we're doing is not just continuing to engage with the people who are already engaged with us. And so with the research that we recruit, the participants we recruit to research, or the people we regularly engage with, it's only a portion of the community. And so we've put extra effort into making sure that no matter where you live in this region, who you are, whether you know HMRI or not, we're trying to get out there and touch the people and work with and sit with people who don't usually interact with us. And so I think we're broadening and hopefully representing more our efforts over the whole community. And then I think by understanding what all of the people in the community want and need in terms of their health and bringing in research or funding research or bringing in clinical trials to address that need, we will hopefully not slowly, quickly move the dial and shift us all to be much healthier than we were.
Frances has always been someone who leans into new technology, and she sees generative AI becoming a meaningful part of medical research. In her view, it's a future where research becomes more efficient and people get more time to focus on the things that humans do best, while AI helps take care of the rest.
So I'm cautiously excited, quite comfortable with this idea, because I guess I've always worked with digital tools and thinking about how to really make sure clinicians, for example, in mental health, are focused on doing the things that they're best at. And so, and I think that's the way that AI will revolutionise and make more effective and efficient the work we do at HMRI.
So make your research more productive.
I think so, by letting the humans do what humans do best. And that's not always what we, the automated, regular, the easy stuff. And so there's, particularly say in cognitive behaviour therapy, there's a lot of education, there's a lot of going through forms, there's a lot of taking people through steps and teaching themselves how to do skills. Now that can very easily be done or delegated to a generative, AI type bot. And we've even done some research where we've compared how a clinical psychologist would respond to a set of symptoms or a scenario, and how ChatGPT responds, and then put that out to the community, and they rated what they liked better, and they all thought it was much more compassionate and empathic coming from the chatbot than from the clinical psychologist. So people like that.
But it could be a very first frontline kind of response, triaging, and then maybe moving people to the human and dealing with people.
But it can only do what the algorithms tell it can do. And so there's particularly in mental health and in the application of research, there's complexity, and humans don't always want to do the ChatGPT version of things. And so you'll always need the human to help be the concierge navigator and safe space to manage that complexity, whether it's, a data analysis, whether it's a health economics analysis, whether it's whatever it is, whether it's a clinical response. And so I think the combination of both means that we can delegate the routine, automated, easier tasks, or the tasks that a computer program does better, to the AI, and we can do the stuff that it can't do.
Well, certainly, I think we know you and I know that when you do research, there's a lot of reading of papers, and these days with the idea that you can get a lot of summaries done, and then find out very quickly which are the papers that you're specifically interested of, because you have to scan a lot to find the gems. So that can actually really improve productivity, and then potentially even test some ideas out, which then means you start to do your experiments on the most likely or most promising lines of work.
And that's why I think science and research, and for me psychology, is still so important, because what you get out of the chatbot or the AI is only as good as the questions that you're asking.
Correct.
And so again, it comes back to what I loved about uni was teaching me how to think about the world, how to be curious, how to ask the right questions. And, the psychology work I did helped hone that a bit. And so so that you can actually get the most out of the bots and the AI. And so that's why I think the human will always need to be there, and that curious research, scientific, clinical mind will actually help get the most out of the AI when it hits us.
Yes, absolutely. I think I totally agree with you. I mean, university is a place you learn to learn, yeah?
Yes. You
absolutely.
can't do it anywhere else.
Exactly. So I guess looking back at your time studying at the university, you've got students out there, studying undergraduate and postgraduate. What advice would you give them? Let's say for a first-year student joining us maybe next year in 2026, what would you say to them? And then maybe what would you say to a PhD and other students sort of going into postgraduate? So two different students. You've been on both those journeys. So what's your advice?
So my advice is essentially the same: do it and say yes. So say yes more often. Now, I'll temper that a little bit. For undergraduate students, for first-year students, it's a pretty intimidating experience coming into this big campus with lots of people. But I really encourage people to come to campus. I think it's really easy and convenient. I think COVID did this a little bit as well, as to sit at home and do things remotely. And of course, you can get the content that way. You absolutely can get the content that way. But it's a bit like the AI version of university. It's not the same as the experiences. So my formative and the things I love, formative experiences about love of learning and getting the most out of my university experience was by doing it on campus. So come to campus. Don't just come to university for the content. Come and open yourself up to a new way of thinking, to meeting people who you've never met before, because you just don't know where that's going to take you. My best group of friends that I still keep contact with are not from high school. They're from university, because we all came together in the same degree. We all developed a thinking and a way in the world that's connected us forever. And we wouldn't have done that by sitting at home just going through content. Now, I know that's not paying homage to the really great way of online delivery and virtual delivery of courses that we have available now, and they are important to explore. But don't forget that, there's this real world experience on campus that you can't replicate anywhere else.
Thank you, Frances. And, it's funny, at the beginning of your answer, you said, say yes more often. Interestingly, we did a podcast with another alumnus, and Tarun Gupta, who's the CEO of Stockland. And he said those very words.
Really?
Say yes more often to opportunities, because what you're saying is it's like say yes to meeting new friends, say yes to this opportunity, say yes to joining this club, or say yes to trying an area of just something you haven't done, or even an opportunity around a job.
Absolutely,
and,
yes.
I think it's a very good, it's interesting to see two different leaders from very different disciplines giving the same advice.
Yeah, because it's also about testing your assumptions. You might assume that this is the right way or the only way, but it's the only way you've known. You haven't tested all the other opportunities. And I think I still have. It's so dorky. But I have a magnet on my fridge which just says a pessimist complains about the noise when opportunity knocks. And that's kind of the say yes more often thing. And I think you don't have to succeed at everything, but just give it a go.
Thank you, Frances. It's been wonderful to have you along here to talk today about your story, and thanks for sharing it with us. So as one of our outstanding alumni, you're a wonderful ambassador for the University of Newcastle. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's just been wonderful.
This was Leading Conversations with University of Newcastle Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky and CEO of the Hunter Medical Research Institute and proud graduate of the University of Newcastle, Frances Kay. This podcast was recorded on Awabakal land at the University of Newcastle's Callaghan campus. To hear more stories from inspiring leaders, be sure to tune in to the next episode featuring Samantha Martin-Williams, former chair of the Newcastle Greater Mutual Group. Until then, this was Leading Conversations with University of Newcastle's Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky.